Hello everyone, how are you all doing today? So today what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to publish an ASP.NET Core and a React app into IIS. Now if you were with me last week, you'll remember that what we did was we basically created an ASP.NET Core app and we integrated a React app into it. So it all ran off the ASP.NET Core application. If you weren't here last week, don't worry, because I'm just going to quickly run through it with you now. So we've got it up here. So this is our application. Inside this client app folder here, we've basically got our React app in there. So we've got all our files in there. We also integrated the two with SignalR as well. So we basically created this message hub, and what would happen is that the React app would actually send a message through SignalR, which the ASP.NET Core app would pick up. No, when it would go through the API, and then the SignalR integration would happen on the actual API call, and it would throw it back to the React app. So if I can show you how it's working, try and run this. And I can show you exactly what we did last week. So just let it build up. So let's see how we're getting on. Okay, it hasn't loaded up yet, but it's just going through the motions. So yeah, just had to do a rebuild there. It's now going up, loading up the browser. So whilst it's doing that, I will just talk to you. No, I think it's loading up now. No, it's still going there at the moment. So I can just quickly talk you through what we did with the React app. So we've got this hub connection here, and it's got this / message. Now that's basically the address for the message hub that we created for SignalR. Starts up a connection, and then what we've got here is we've got a couple of React function components. We've got send message, so it's got a text box and a button. And then we've got a list of all the messages, which is down here. So all being well, if our React app has started, which it has, we can put messages in here. And then, yeah, it goes through SignalR, calls an API point in the ASP.NET Core application, and then it uses SignalR to basically throw the message back. So, done that. So if we stop the application now, so once that's stopped, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the message controller it goes through. So it's basically going through this create method here that you can see on the screen. We've got this send to React method here, and what basically happens is in here it basically hooks into that actual method there, and then once it's done that, it stores the message into a list array and then basically updates the messages. So it's basically going to be sending this message here back to the React application. So that's all very well and good. Next thing we want to do though is we want to learn how to publish it. How can we publish it? I mean, I'm going to show you how to publish it in IIS, but you probably follow the same sort of principles if you're using Azure or if you want to use a Docker container. I personally don't know a lot about Azure or Docker container, but I will certainly show you how to do it in IIS. So let's get on with it now. So we need to make a few changes first. So first one we need to do, so when we use it in the IIS app, it's going to have a different host. So on here we've got like local host port number, but we're just going to create our own host. Probably call it React SignalR or something like that. So what I realized from the last demo is that basically I've got the full URL for this bit where it's submitting it to the API. So it's submitting the message to API so SignalR can communicate with it. So we just need to take that off and make it a relative link. So let's go ahead and do that. so that's done. So next part we need to do is we need to tell the ASP.NET Core application where the static files are going to be. So for our React app, where are the CSS and the JavaScript files, where are they going to sit? So we're going to do that in the startup configuration. So we go in here, we need to go into our configure method. So if I bring that down a bit, so we've got a bit more room. So if we go into our configure method and we go in, it's underneath, well, we're going to put it underneath here. And what we need to do is we need to use the add static, spar static files. So we've got the method there. And then we need to create a new static files option. And the request path is going to be client app. So that's the folder with our React app. And then when it builds all the files up, it will store it into a build folder. So when we actually build it, it will all be stored, when it uses the TypeScript and converts it all into JavaScript and all the Sass files into CSS, it will all go in the build folder. So let's go ahead and put that in. There we go, that's that done. So when you create a React app through one of the React boilerplates in ASP.NET Core, in one of the Visual Studio templates, it creates a sort of series of functions in the project file where basically it basically checks that you've got Node installed, and then does an npm install, and then it does a build on the React app as well using npm. Because we created just an API application, we haven't got that at the moment, so we need to integrate that in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the csproj file, and then basically I'm going to have to include some of these things in. So let's overwrite that. Right, so let's move that down there. So .NET Core 3.1, we already had that in, and then some stuff about TypeScript is packable. Spar root, it routes it to the React app, client app, and then it's also got this default items excludes. So basically we don't want to be including the node modules in that. So we've got some package references for our ASP.NET Core application. That's all good. So this first step here that we need to do, so this is just basically just specifying where the files are, I believe, where the React files are. The next part after that, this basically ensures that Node is installed, and if it isn't, then it will basically throw an error. So that's all good in there. Also checks the Node version as well, just to make sure. And it does an npm installed, so it makes sure that all the Node files in your React app have actually been installed. Lastly, we need to input the publish target. So let's do that. Let's copy that in. So what this is doing is, so basically we're going to publish this to a folder, and we're going to map that folder to IIS. And this is basically some of the commands that it needs to do. So it needs to do an npm install just to make sure all the node modules are installed. And it's going to use this yarn build :IIS, and we're going to set that up in a bit, but basically that's going to build our React app. And then it just basically distributes all the files, and this is what's basically happening down here. So next part, so we've got this build :IIS. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to create an environment type called IIS. So we've got a couple of steps that we need to do with this. Let's get a lot of emergency services down here. Live on a busy road. So right, so we need to create an environment.iis, and we need to do it in the client app folder. So let's go ahead and do that. So we need to create a key called public URL and specify where the build folders are. So basically when it's built, when we go back to, where is it? I believe it's in public. So this is our sort of home page for our React app. And you can see here, we've got this public URL in here. So we basically need to specify the path as to where these files are going to be located. So we've done that, we've saved that. The next step after that is we need to go into our package.json file. Now this is where we're basically going to set up that build::IIS, which I just showed you. So we're going to be setting up this here, this build::IIS. So if we go in here, and we basically need to run this command here. So I'm going to write this out and then talk you through exactly what's happening. So in a moment we need to install this env-cmd. This is so the environment files, the one that I just set up, actually work. And then it points to this file here. That's the one we just created, so it's this one here. So it's pointing to that, so it knows that. And then it's just running this React scripts build. So pretty much default to React. Right, next we need to add some yarn packages into our project. So we need to add the env-cmd, which I just told you about. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So this may take a while, might not be too bad. In fact, I think this is not too bad. I think it's when we actually try and publish the solution, has to go through, install all the node modules, and then it basically has to build the ASP.NET Core application as well as the React application as well. So we just let that do that at the moment. And also, so what should happen with this is it should install Bubble Runtime, but it didn't seem to work. It seemed to throw up an error when I was trying it yesterday. So we need to also install that as well. So we will be doing that afterwards once this has all been complete. So yeah, it takes a little bit of time. So whilst it's actually doing that, we're going to just step ahead a little bit about hosting. So if you want to run this on IIS, you need to make sure that you've got the ASP.NET Core Runtime installed. So most of you have probably got the SDK installed for doing your developments and that. And as you can see here, it says on Windows, we recommend installing the hosting bundle, which includes .NET Core Runtime and IIS support. So that's this option here. So you need to make sure that for whatever ASP.NET Core version you're running, that you basically make sure that that's installed onto your server. Let's have a look and see how it's getting on. It's still running at the moment. But yeah, it's going to be dependent on the version you're using. If you haven't got the right one installed or you're using a different version, then you might have some issues. But you can sort of debug it as well. You can sort of set logs when you're running it through IIS, which is quite good. And if I remember, I'll show it to you later on. So, nearly there, I think. No, it's doing something else now. Good opportunity to have a sip of water. So, final part, it's doing something else now. All done, is it? Just thinking about it. Yes, it's done. Right. Next part, no, we don't want to do that. We want to do it down here. We just need to add the Babel in. I'm not really too sure what Babel is, to be honest, but it's required for this. I'm sure people way more knowledgeable than me will know. So here we go. Again, it doesn't look like it's going to take quite so long this time. That number down there is a lot lower than the 22,000 from last time. All being well. Here we go. So what we're going to do after this, we're going to publish it in in Visual Studio, but then that's going to take even longer than this. So we're going to set up IIS, and we're also going to set up host file as well. So here we go. So let's go back to our Visual Studio. Okay, so let's go ahead and now publish it. So we're going to publish it to a folder. So if we click on publish here, just let it load up. So here we go. So yeah, where are you publishing it today? So you've got options in Visual Studio 2019 where you can publish it to Azure if you're using that, publish it to a Docker container by the looks of it. You can also publish it to IIS directly and FTP and a couple of other things, but we're going to choose folder today. We're going to do that. So we're going to set it into a folder, and we're just going to publish it into our publish folder. So that's all good. Folder location, let's go ahead and do that. So all set up there. You need to click on the publish button here. That's something I forgot to do when I was testing it earlier. So it looks like it's doing something. It's going ahead and doing the build. So yeah, whilst it's doing that, let's go ahead and we'll set up the IIS record. So first things first, though, jumping ahead of myself a bit there, we need to just set up a host for it. So we're going to call it, well, we need to specify the local address for this machine. It's 192.168.0.5, and we're just going to create a local React SignalR. That's going to be our host name for it. So done that. Then if we go back, I'm going to copy that actually, and then I can paste it when I'm setting up the IIS configuration. So let's set up the website. So there we go. Now what I need to do here is I need to get the full path for it. So it's going to be sitting in here. We don't want to start it at this point because we don't want IIS to sort of stop it from publishing the files. It should be all right, but just to be on the safe side, we're just going to have it non-secure as it's a demo. I certainly wouldn't recommend it if you're doing it in production, if the whole world is seeing it. But certainly for a demo, it's absolutely fine. Let's not start it for now. There we go. So we've called it SignalR. Let's call it React SignalR. So we can just rename that if we need to, and we're going to in this. So there we go. We've changed that. So yeah. So this is basically going through the steps that I showed you for the publishing. So it's doing this npm install, and then it's running the yarn build :IIS at the moment. So it can take a bit of time to go through and do that. But once it's done though, that's it. We should have it all working in IIS, and then we should just be able to have a play around with it and see how it works. So it's always the install that seems to take a little bit of time. The actual build doesn't take so long. What I'll do is once it's all done, I'll show you the publish folder, and you can see the actual TypeScript, the TypeScript files being converted into JavaScript files. It's quite clever, I think. Quite appreciative as to how clever it is, how they can sort of write a preprocessor and then they can just convert it into TypeScript. There must have been a lot of man hours at Microsoft doing that. Okay, so you get a few warnings here. It's nothing I don't think that we need to be concerned about. I'm sure we'll find out when we've got some errors, but certainly for now I think we're going to be okay. Something about not removing. Not sure what that is. So we've got an empty folder. Have we got any files there yet? No, we haven't, so it must still be doing the installation. Oh, yeah, no, it's still empty. So if you weren't with us last week, I might just talk you through a couple of other aspects why this does what it needs to do. So this hub, this is basically inheriting the hub, and that's from SignalR. It's part of the SignalR library. Again, we're not really, well, we're not using it at this point here. It's basically being used in our API message. So we set up this API message controller here, and what happens is it basically uses dependency injection and passes in the message hub through the iHub context interface, and then we're basically using it, and basically all the clients that are connected through SignalR. So in our example, it's a React app, but you could also have an Angular app connected through the same SignalR hub. It doesn't really matter. And then as long as the application, so in our React app, it's listening out for this send to React, and if it gets a message from it, then it will basically respond to that message in the way you want it to. So that could happen with an Angular app as well. So you could program it in the same way, and it doesn't really matter too much. And then what this is doing is it's just basically sending the message saying that it's been received. So it's doing that, and then we were just returning a 200 response. We're not actually returning anything in the response. So when the response is returned, it will just be an empty 200 response. So is there anything else? We did have a number of configuration changes to make in here. So we have to specify this sparse static files, make sure it's routed to the client app build. And after all that, we've actually got an error. What is the error? I can't find the file, env-cmd. I'm wondering if I've put that in the wrong place. I may very well have done. Let's have a look. Oh, the wonders of a live demo. Ah, I know what I've done. Yeah, so made a small mistake there. Hopefully this shouldn't take too long though, because now we should have all the node modules installed. But basically it should be .env.iis. I've got to put the dot at the beginning. So let's go ahead and do that again. Let's just remove this publish folder. So let's do that. That's all gone. And hopefully this shouldn't take too much longer. That might have been why it was taking so long to do. But let's have a look. So hopefully, as I say, we shouldn't have to install all the node modules again, all being well. We will see on that, but hopefully. So if there's any sort of comments that you wish to make on this, or any sort of ideas you've got of what you want me to talk through on these live streams, then please let me know. Just drop me a message, roundthecode.com. There's a contact button at the top of the page. Click on that, fill in your name, your email address, write any comments you want, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So all being well. Oh, I think it is doing the npm installed again, unfortunately. Oh no, we're good. We're good. It's now actually building the React app. So it's now actually got through that, creating an optimized product build. And hopefully this should now be creating the files into our publish folder. So if we go in here and see if no, we haven't got anything at the moment, getting a bit premature. Yes, we're all good. So yeah, there we go. So we've got all our DLLs in here. Got a web config as well. I know you're sort of used to that, not used to that in ASP.NET Core, but this is basically used. I can quickly show you that actually. If you've never published a ASP.NET Core application before, then it's probably worth just having a quick look at it. We can open it up. So not much to it. It's basically got this handler of ASP.NET Core, and it's using ASP.NET Core module v2. Don't know what was in V1. I don't know what the difference is between V1 and V2. And then what we've got here is some sort of process. It's targeting the React SignalR.dll. And then you've got this log enabled, so it's default set to false, but you can set it to true. So that's really, if you're having some issues, like you're getting a weird error with IIS, and you're not too sure what's going on with it, set that to true, and it will actually tell you what's going on. So if there's any errors, then it will basically log those errors to a folder. And that's all there is to that. So last thing we need to do is we need to turn on our website on IIS. So that's all good to go. So we called it React SignalR. So hopefully we should be able to run that, and we should be able to see our React app. So let's see what happens. It should work, he says nervously. There we go. So we've got our React app working. So let's just check and make sure that the SignalR connection is working fine. Oh no, something. Oh yes, no, it is working. Weren't too sure what was going on there. Maybe it had to do a bit of warming up. Let's just send another message anyways. Yes, so it's all good, it's all working. Just before I go, I want to show you about the logs. So this is probably empty at the moment. Yeah, you can see it's got 0 kg, but basically it will output any sort of errors into a log file like this. So basically, if you have any errors, as long as you've got IIS configured properly, if you haven't got that configured properly, then this is not going to work. If it can't run the actual application, and sometimes it's because you haven't installed the .NET Core Runtime, which I showed you earlier on in the video. So something to bear in mind. Right, so that's it for me. If you've got any sort of comments, then go to roundthecode.com and click on the contact form, or you can leave a message on this YouTube video. More .NET articles, if you want to read more about .NET and SQL Server, go to roundthecode.com. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and like this if you liked it. roundthecode.com/YouTube. And you can also follow me on Twitter. It's @roundthecode. So, hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.